The sun hung like a molten coin in the sky, blistering and unrelenting above the endless dunes of Xerax 9, a forsaken desert world where the wind howled secrets through ancient stone ruins and the sands shifted like restless dreams. The air shimmered with heat, distorting the horizon into liquid waves, and beneath that cruel sky, a lone figure stood amidst the wreckage of war. His name was Darrick, a human male forged not by privilege or prophecy, but by fire, loss, and the relentless will to survive. He wasn't tall by alien standards, nor did he wear armor adorned with glowing runes or energy shields humming with technology. No, Darrick wore scorched leather, cracked from sandstorms and stained with blood, his own and others. His face bore the map of battles past, a scar across his cheek from a plasma whip, another over his brow from a shattered visor, and eyes the color of storm clouds, sharp and unyielding. His hands, calloused, split at the knuckles, and wrapped in frayed cloth, were not meant for courtly gestures or delicate instruments. They were tools of destruction, honed by years of gripping weapons, climbing cliffs, and breaking bone. Before him lay the aftermath of a skirmish-turned-massacre. Twisted metal hulls of crashed dropships jutted from the sand like the bones of dead beasts. Bodies, some human, some not, lay scattered across the scorched earth. But these weren't ordinary enemies. These were the Vraxlak, lizard-like aliens from the Outer Rim, known across the galaxy as merciless conquerors, their reptilian forms armored in thick, mottled scales the color of dried blood and poison. They stood on two powerful legs, clawed hands ending in talons capable of slicing through steel, and jaws lined with rows of jagged teeth designed to crush bone and tear flesh. Their yellow eyes glowed with predatory intelligence, and their long tails lashed like whips when they attacked. They had descended upon this forgotten outpost seeking resources, slaves, and glory. What they found instead was Darrick and resistance. He had fought them with everything he had. His sword, a heavy, double-edged blade forged from salvaged starship alloy, had tasted Vraxlak blood early in the battle. One after another, the monsters fell before his fury. He moved like a whirlwind, ducking under snapping jaws, sidestepping claws, and driving his blade deep into throats and hearts. But fate, as it often does in war, turned on a single misstep. A lucky swipe from a Vraxlak's tail sent him stumbling back, and in that moment of imbalance, his sword flew from his grip, vanishing into a drift of hot sand. The remaining three aliens saw their chance. They circled him, drooling, hissing, their forked tongues flicking the air as they scented weakness. But Darrick didn't flinch. He spat blood onto the sand, wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, and grinned. A wild, feral thing that made even the beasts hesitate. Then, without warning, he charged. No weapon, no shield, just raw, unfiltered rage and muscle memory carved from a lifetime of survival. He ducked under the first beast's lunge, grabbed its scaled head with both hands, and twisted. There was a sickening crack, and the creature dropped like a sack of stones. The second lunged, jaws wide enough to swallow a man's arm. But Darrick didn't retreat. Instead, he stepped into the attack, slamming his forearm into the roof of its mouth, then grabbing both sides of its jaw with his bare hands. With a roar that echoed across the dunes, he pulled, muscles straining, tendons screaming, as the alien's powerful mandibles resisted, then gave way with a wet, tearing sound. The jawbones snapped clean off, dangling from his fingers like grotesque trophies. The creature shrieked, a sound like metal scraping stone, before collapsing in a twitching heap. The third Vraxlak hesitated, its primal instincts warring between hunger and fear. It had never seen anything like this. A soft-skinned biped weaponless, facing down its kind with nothing but bare hands and madness. But pride, or perhaps stupidity, won out. Charged, claws slashing, tail whipping. Darrick met it head-on, catching the downward swipe with his forearms, the impact sending shockwaves up to his shoulders. He twisted, using the alien's momentum against it, and drove his knee into its gut. As it doubled over, he locked his arms around its neck and lifted, flipping it onto its back with a force that cracked the ground beneath. Before it could rise, he was on top of it, one knee pinning its chest, the other braced against its throat. He reached for its head, fingers digging into the tough hide behind the jaw. The alien thrashed, spitting venom, but Darrick leaned in close, his breath ragged, his voice a low growl. "You wanted a fight?" he muttered. "You got one." And with a final surge of strength, he tore its lower jaw clean off, tossing it aside like garbage. The creature gurgled, its life draining into the sand, and Darrick rose slowly, breathing hard, covered in blood, sweat, and dust. He stood over the fallen beasts, victorious, monstrous in his own right. Not because he enjoyed killing, but because he refused to die. Unseen by him, high atop a crumbling stone archway that once belonged to a forgotten civilization, a figure watched. She was unlike any being native to this world. Tall, elegant, and radiating an aura of quiet power, she was humanoid, but clearly not of Earth. Her skin was a deep, shimmering blue, like twilight over ocean depths, smooth and flawless, untouched by the harsh sun. Her hair flowed like liquid sapphire down her back, glowing faintly in the desert light, defying gravity with every subtle movement. Her eyes, large, almond-shaped, and a startling silver white, narrowed slightly as she observed the warrior below. She wore armor, yes, but not the bulky, mechanical kind favored by warmongers. Hers was sleek, form-fitting, crafted from a material that seemed to shift colors with the light, like oil on water, protected without burdening, enhancing her natural grace. On her hip hung a curved blade that hummed faintly, and across her back rested a staff tipped with a crystal that pulsed with inner light. She was Princess Sirena of the Celestari, a noble race known for their wisdom, advanced science, and strict code of honor. Her people had come to Xirax 9 not to conquer, but to observe, to study the conflict between humans and Vraxlac, and to determine whether either species deserved alliance or eradication. She had expected tactics, strategy, perhaps even cowardice. What she had not expected was this. A man, alone, weaponless, ripping apart armored predators with his bare hands like a mythic beast from ancient legend. As Darrick stood over the last of the fallen, breathing heavily, wiping gore from his face with the back of his hand, Sirena stepped forward, her boots making no sound on the ancient stone. She descended the ruined arch with the grace of falling rain, her presence announced only by the sudden stillness in the air, the wind itself seeming to pause in reverence. When she finally stood on the battlefield, mere yards from the blood-soaked warrior, he turned, wary, muscles tensed, ready to fight again if needed. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other. One a creature of earth and fire, the other of stars and ice. Darrick's heart pounded, not just from exertion, but from something deeper, something unfamiliar. She was beautiful, yes, breathtakingly so. But it wasn't just her appearance. It was the calm in her eyes, the strength in her posture, the quiet authority that surrounded her like a cloak. And yet, there was something else. Curiosity? Amusement? Then, to his utter astonishment, she smiled. Not a smirk, not a taunt, but a genuine, radiant smile that lit up her entire face like a sunrise over frozen lakes. And when she spoke, her voice was melodic, layered with harmonics that resonated in his chest, as if her words were sung rather than spoken. "I have seen many warriors," she said, stepping closer, her silver eyes fixed on his. "Champions of empires, generals with armies at their backs, warriors wielding weapons that burn stars. I have seen courage, skill, even madness. But I have never seen that." She gestured to the dismembered Vraxlac bodies. "To fight such creatures barehanded, to tear their jaws from their skulls like plucking fruit from a tree, that is not skill. That is not training. That is something else." Darrick blinked, wiping sweat from his brow. "Something else?" he grunted. "Call it survival, or revenge. Take your pick." Sirena tilted her head, studying him. "You speak as if it's nothing, but it is everything. You could have run. You could have surrendered. You could have died quietly, but you chose to stand, to fight, with your hands." She took another step, close enough now that he could see the tiny flecks of light dancing in her irises. "In my culture, such strength, such defiance, is not just admired. It is honored. It is celebrated." He snorted, looking away. "Yeah, well, where I'm from, celebrating usually comes after you're sure the next monster isn't gonna bite your head off." She laughed then, a rich musical sound that startled him. It was laughter, yes, but also warmth and wonder, and something dangerously close to affection. "You are unlike any human I have encountered," she said, her tone softer now. "Rough, yes, scarred, covered in filth and blood, but there is fire in you, not just anger, purpose, and humor, even now, when death still hangs in the air." Darrick looked back at her, frowning. "What do you want?" Instead of answering, she reached out, slowly, deliberately, and touched his forearm. Her fingers were cool against his burning skin, and the contact sent a strange shiver through him. "I came here to observe," she admitted. "To judge. To decide if your species is worth saving. But now," she paused, her gaze searching his, "now I find myself wondering what it would be like if a man like you stood beside me, not as a soldier, not as a servant, as an equal, as a partner." Her words hung in the air, heavier than the desert heat. Darrick felt his breath catch. "Partner?" he repeated, voice low. "Yes," she said simply. "A husband, a mate, a king perhaps if you desired it." She smiled again, small this time, almost shy. "I wish you were my husband." He stared at her, dumbfounded. You what? "You heard me," she said, lifting her chin. "I am Sirena, daughter of the High Star Council, heir to the celestial throne of Luminar. I do not make idle declarations. I speak truth. And the truth is, I have never seen anyone fight like you, never seen anyone live like you. You are chaos and courage wrapped in flesh. And I find myself wanting that near me. Always." Darrick let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "Lady, you must have hit your head. I'm a dirt scratcher from a backwater planet. I don't even have a working comm unit. Last week I ate a rat because it was either that or starve. And you're telling me you want to marry me? Why not?" she countered, unfazed. "My people value strength of spirit above all. Technology can be learned, language mastered, but heart, will, the willingness to face impossible odds with nothing but your fists, that cannot be taught. It is born. And you have it in abundance." He shook his head, running a hand through his dusty hair. "You don't know me. You don't know what I've done, what I've lost." "No," she agreed, "but I see you, and that is enough for now." A silence stretched between them, filled only by the whisper of wind over sand. Somewhere in the distance, a scavenger bird cried, circling above the battlefield. Darrick looked at her, really looked, and for the first time in years he didn't feel like a weapon. He didn't feel like a survivor. He felt seen. Before he could respond, a low rumble echoed across the dunes. From beyond the ridge, a massive shadow emerged. A Vraxlack warcrawler, a hulking six-legged machine of black metal and pulsing red engines, dragging itself over the sand like a mechanical nightmare. Turrets swiveled on its back, scanning the battlefield. More of the lizard aliens poured from its underbelly, dozens of them, armed with plasma rifles and jagged blades. The fight wasn't over. It had only just begun. Darrick sighed, cracking his neck. "Well, looks like your romantic proposal's gonna have to wait." Sirena didn't move. "Or," she said calmly, drawing her humming blade, "it could begin now." He glanced at her, then at the approaching horde. "You really gonna fight beside me?" "I already have," she said, stepping shoulder to shoulder with him. "I just haven't told you yet." And then, without another word, the war resumed. The warcrawler opened fire first, bolts of crimson plasma screaming across the dunes, exploding in geysers of molten sand. Darrick dove behind a shattered dropship hull, Sirena sliding in beside him with unnatural grace. Sparks rained down as more shots struck metal, filling the air with the stench of burning wires and ozone. "We need a plan," Darrick shouted over the din. "We have one," Sirena replied, activating her staff. The crystal at its tip flared to life, projecting a shimmering energy shield that deflected the next volley of plasma. "You cause chaos. I create openings. Together we end this." He grinned. "You mean you cause chaos? I just break things. Same difference." With that, she leapt over the wreckage, her blade a blur of light as she cut down two Vraxlack mid-charge. Darrick followed, roaring as he charged into the fray, grabbing a rifle from a fallen alien and using it as a club. He smashed it across a lizard's skull, then kicked another into the path of Sirena's spinning strike, which cleaved it cleanly in two. They fought like a storm given form. Sirena fluid and precise, every movement calculated, every strike lethal. Darrick brutal and unpredictable, smashing, grappling, biting when necessary. At one point, a Vraxlack pinned him, jaws snapping inches from his face. Before it could bite, Sirena drove her staff through its chest, yanking it free with a twist. Darrick rolled away, gasping, then grabbed a loose cable from the warcrawler and looped it around another alien's neck, using the machine's own momentum to hurl it into a group of three others. The warcrawler loomed closer, its main cannon charging with a high-pitched whine. Sirena saw it first. "Darrick!" The cannon, It's targeting us. He looked up, saw the pulsing red glow building in the barrel. Oh, come on. Without thinking, he sprinted toward the machine, dodging blasts, leaping over fallen bodies. Sirena followed, shielding him with her energy field. He reached the base of the crawler just as the cannon fired, not at them but at the ancient stone arch behind them. The blast obliterated the structure, sending rubble crashing down. But Darrick wasn't aiming for the cannon. He climbed, using the treads and exposed wiring as footholds, scaling the beast like a mountain. Plasma bolts seared past him. Claws swiped. He took a slash across the ribs, gritting his teeth as blood soaked his side. Finally, he reached the command deck, a glass dome housing 2 elite Vraxlak officers. He didn't hesitate. With a roar, he punched through the reinforced glass, grabbed the nearest alien by the throat, and yanked it out, hurling it into the sand below. The second turned, raising a plasma pistol, but Darrick was faster. He ripped the weapon from its hand, smashed it across its snout, then grabbed its head and twisted until something snapped. Inside the cockpit, controls flashed with alien symbols. Darrick had no idea how to pilot the thing, but he knew how to break it. He tore out wires, smashed consoles, and finally, with a grunt, pulled the central core from its housing. A glowing orb of unstable energy. Alarms blared. The warcrawler shuddered, engines failing. Sirena saw what he was about to do. Darrick, no, throw it away. But he was already turning, holding the core like a grenade. Too late, he yelled, sprinting toward the edge. He jumped just as the warcrawler exploded behind him. A fireball of blue and orange that lit up the entire desert, sending shockwaves through the sand. He landed hard, rolling, the heat singing his back. Sirena was at his side in seconds, helping him up. You could have died, she snapped, though her voice trembled. Nah, he panted, grinning through bloodied lips. Just adding to the story. And then the guy who tore lizard jaws with his hands also blew up a warcrawler with his bare hands. Sounds good, right? She stared at him, then burst into laughter, shaking her head. You are insane. And yet, he said, leaning on her for support. You still want to marry me? She looked at him, her silver eyes softening. More than ever. The battlefield fell silent, save for the crackle of flames and the distant cry of scavengers. The Vraxlak were gone, either dead or fled. The sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the dunes in gold and violet. Darrick sat on a broken slab of stone, letting Sirena clean his wounds with a strange, glowing gel from her kit. It stings, he muttered. Good, she said. Pain reminds you you're alive. He chuckled. You're kind of terrifying, you know that? And you, she replied, are kind of magnificent. He didn't answer, just looked out over the desert, at the endless sands, the dying light, the stars beginning to pierce the twilight. For the first time in a long time, he didn't feel empty. He didn't feel like a weapon. He felt possible. Somewhere in the galaxy, a war still raged. Empires clashed. Species fought for survival. But here, on a forgotten rock under a foreign sky, 2 beings from different worlds sat together, bloodied, bruised, and strangely hopeful. And though neither said it aloud, they both knew. This was only the beginning. The night on Zirax 9 was a world unto itself. Cold, vast, and alive with stars. The desert heat that had scorched the land by day now fled into the void, leaving behind a biting chill that crept through Darrick's bones. He sat wrapped in a thermal blanket Sirena had produced from her satchel, a shimmering fabric that adjusted its warmth like a living thing, while she stood nearby, scanning the horizon with a small, crystalline device that pulsed softly in her palm. He watched her in silence, the way the starlight caught in her blue hair, how her movements were always precise, deliberate, as if every step were part of some greater rhythm only she could hear. She wasn't just beautiful, she was other. And yet, standing there covered in alien blood, his ribs aching and his hands trembling from adrenaline, he didn't feel out of place beside her. If anything, he felt matched. You're staring, she said without turning, a faint smile playing on her lips. Can you blame me? He replied, voice rough but warm. 1 minute I'm fighting for my life. The next some blue-skinned princess tells me she wants to marry me. I'm allowed to stare. She turned then, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the dark. I meant what I said. I know, he said quietly. And that's what scares me. She tilted her head. Why? He looked down at his hands, still wrapped in torn cloth, still stained with Vraxlak gore. Because I don't know how to be what you need. I'm not noble. I'm not refined. I don't speak 10 languages or know the difference between your kind's poetry and their battle chants. I break things. That's all I've ever been good at. Sirena stepped closer, kneeling in front of him so they were eye to eye. Darrick, she said, using his name for the first time, and the sound of it on her tongue sent a strange warmth through his chest. You think strength is measured by titles? By lineage? By how many stars your ancestors conquered? She shook her head. On Luminar, we believe true power lies in choice, in standing when others fall, in protecting life even when death is easier. You did that today. Not for glory, not for reward, because it was right. He swallowed hard. I just wanted to survive. And yet, she whispered, you saved others too. I saw the human survivors hiding in the ruins. You drew the Vraxlak away from them. You fought so they could live. That is not survival. That is sacrifice. And that, she placed a cool hand over his heart, is royalty. He didn't move, didn't breathe. Her touch was gentle, but it felt like lightning beneath his skin. Before either could speak again, her scanner beeped. An urgent, high-pitched tone. She glanced at it, her expression shifting instantly from tenderness to alertness. We're not alone, she said. A Celestari scout vessel is approaching. It's mine. Darrick tensed. Yours? So you're calling backup? No, she said, standing. I'm calling escape. The Vraxlak will send reinforcements. This battlefield will be swarming with them by dawn. We need to leave. Now. He groaned as he pushed himself up. Figures. Just when things were getting romantic. She smirked. Romance can wait. Survival comes first. Moments later, a sleek, crescent-shaped ship descended from the sky, silent as a shadow, its hull shifting colors like a living aurora. It hovered just above the sand before lowering gently, a ramp extending with a soft hiss. 2 armed Celestari guards emerged, tall, blue-skinned warriors clad in flowing armor. But Sirena raised a hand, stopping them. This is Darrick, she announced. He fights with me. He travels with me. No questions. The guards exchanged glances but bowed their heads. As you command, Princess. Darrick raised an eyebrow. Command? Since when am I under your command? Since now, she said, stepping onto the ramp and offering him her hand. Welcome to my crew. He hesitated only a second before taking it. Inside, the ship was nothing like the clunky human vessels he'd known. No blinking red lights, no groaning engines, no smell of oil and sweat. Instead, the walls pulsed with soft bioluminescence. The air carried a faint scent of rain and ozone, and the floor responded subtly to each footstep, adjusting temperature and firmness. Darrick ran a hand along the wall, half expecting it to be warm, but it was cool, almost soothing. This thing alive? He asked. In a way, Sirena said, leading him to a chamber where a basin of shimmering liquid awaited. Remove your clothes. You need healing. He blinked. Excuse me? The gel only does so much. You have internal bruising, fractured ribs, and a plasma burn that's beginning to fester. The rejuvenation pool will repair it. He crossed his arms. Lady, I don't care how pretty you are. I'm not getting naked in front of you. She rolled her eyes. You humans and your modesty. Fine. I'll wait outside. But if you die from infection because you're too proud to bathe, I'm not reviving you. She left, the door sealing behind her with a whisper. Alone, Darrick stared at the pool. It looked like liquid moonlight. Slowly, painfully, he peeled off his ruined gear, wincing as dried blood cracked from his skin. His body was a tapestry of scars, old and new, each one a story of pain, loss, and survival. He stepped into the pool. The moment the liquid touched him, warmth flooded his veins. It wasn't water. It moved through him, sinking into his pores, wrapping around his bones. Pain melted away, cuts sealed, bruises faded. Even the ache in his soul seemed to soften. He sank deeper, eyes closing, feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. When he emerged, clean and whole, wearing a simple gray tunic provided by the ship, Sirena was waiting. She didn't comment on his healed body, just handed him a glass of something golden that fizzed like champagne but smelled like citrus and fire. What is this? He asked. Star drink, fermented from solar blossoms grown on my homeworld. 1 sip and you'll dream in color. He took a cautious sip and nearly spat it out. Tastes like someone set a lemon on fire. She laughed. You'll get used to it. They sat together in the observation deck, watching Zirax-9 shrink behind them as the ship leapt into hyperspace. Stars stretched into streaks, then vanished as they entered the luminous tunnel of faster-than-light travel. Darrick leaned back, stunned. So, where are we going? Luminar, she said. My home. My people must know of the Vraxlack threat. And I want them to meet you. He frowned. Meet me? Why? Because, she said, turning to him. If I am to take a husband, it must be done properly. Before the High Council. With witnesses. With ceremony. He choked on his star drink. Wait. You're serious? You actually want to go through with this? Of course, she said, as if it were obvious. Did you think I spoke lightly? I thought you were caught up in the moment. Blood, explosions, near death. People say crazy things. And yet, she countered, I've had hours to reconsider, to reflect, and my heart hasn't changed. She reached for his hand. Darrick, I don't need perfection. I need truth. And you are the most honest person I've ever met. You don't pretend to be more than you are. You don't hide your pain. You face it. You fight through it. That is rare. That is precious. He looked down at their joined hands, his rough, scarred human, her smooth, glowing, alien. And yet they fit. I don't know how to be a prince, he admitted. You won't be a prince, she said. You'll be Darrick, my equal, my partner, my warrior, my love. The word hung in the air like a comet's tail. Bright, impossible, beautiful. Love. He hadn't heard it in years. Not since before the war took everything. Not since before he became a ghost with fists. And now, here it was, offered freely, fiercely, by a woman who defied gravity and fought with starlight. He didn't say yes. Not yet. But he didn't say no. Instead, he leaned forward and kissed her. It was clumsy. Human lips against alien skin, cooler than expected, softer than silk. But the moment their mouths met, something sparked between them. A current that raced through both their bodies, making the ship's lights flicker in response. The very air hummed. When they pulled apart, Sirana's eyes were wide, her breath shallow. That was unexpected. Yeah, Darrick muttered, grinning. Sorry. Got caught up in the moment. She slapped his arm, lightly, playfully. You insufferable man. You ruined centuries of royal courtship with one kiss. Hey, you said you liked honesty. I did, she said, smiling slowly. And I like this too. Their journey to Luminar took 9 days in hyperspace. Days filled with quiet moments, shared meals, and stories. Darrick told her of Earth, the oceans, the forests, the cities buried under ash after the Vraxlack invasion. He spoke of his sister, lost in the bombing of New Carthage. Of the years he spent scavenging, fighting, surviving. He didn't cry, but his voice broke once, and Sirana didn't speak. She just held his hand. In return, she told him of Luminar, a world of floating cities, crystalline forests, and rivers that sang at dawn. Of her mother, the late Empress, who had died defending a refugee colony from raiders. Of her father, who had withdrawn into silence, leaving her to carry the weight of a throne she never asked for. We are more alike than you think, she said one evening, as they floated in zero gravity, drifting among the stars visible through the dome above. Both of us carry ghosts. Yeah, he said, brushing a strand of sapphire hair from her face. But maybe we don't have to carry them alone. She smiled. No, maybe not. When they finally arrived at Luminar, the planet took Darrick's breath away. It hung in space like a jewel, swirls of blue and silver, continents shaped like spirals, oceans glowing with bioluminescent life. Cities hovered above the surface, connected by bridges of light, while great ships shaped like birds glided between them. But not everyone welcomed their arrival. At the Grand Spire, the tallest structure in the system, where the High Council convened, elders in flowing robes waited, their expressions cold. They questioned Sirana's judgment. They scoffed at the idea of a human, especially one without rank, wealth, or lineage, becoming consort to the future empress. He is a brute, said Elder Valen, his voice sharp as ice. A savage. Look at him. He reeks of violence. Darrick, standing beside Sirana in simple attire, merely crossed his arms. Guilty as charged. Sirana rose, her presence commanding the room. He is brave. He is loyal. He is strong beyond measure, and he fought not for conquest, but for life. What greater qualification is there? The elders argued. They cited tradition, protocol, the balance of power. Finally, Elder Valen sneered. Let him prove it. Let him face the trial of the ancients. If he survives, he may stand beside you. If not, he will be exiled. Cyrena's jaw tightened. The trial is meant for trained warriors. He has no knowledge of our ways. Then he dies, Valen said simply. Darrick stepped forward. I'll do it. Darrick, no. He called me a brute, Darrick said, smirking. Might as well give him a show. The trial of the ancients was held in the Arena of Echoes, a vast, circular coliseum carved into a mountain, where the spirits of past warriors were said to whisper with every step. The trial was not a single combat, but a series of challenges designed to test strength, wisdom, and spirit. First came the Gauntlet of Blades, a maze of spinning, razor-edged pendulums. Darrick didn't dodge. He charged, using his speed and timing to slip between them, emerging with only a few shallow cuts. Next, the Puzzle of Whispers, a chamber where riddles were spoken in forgotten tongues. Darrick couldn't understand the words, but Cyrena, watching from the stands, began humming a melody, one they'd shared on the ship. He closed his eyes, listened, and followed the tune, pressing the correct stones in sequence. The final challenge was the Duel of Shadows, where a warrior faced a holographic projection of their greatest fear. The arena darkened, and then, from the mist they appeared. His squad, his friends, dead, burned, screaming his name. I trusted you, one cried. You left us. You failed us, another shouted. You weren't strong enough. Darrick fell to his knees, pain ripping through him. These weren't enemies. These were the faces of his guilt. But then, a voice soft, certain, cut through the noise. You did not fail, Cyrena's voice echoed. You survived, and you kept fighting. That is not failure. That is honor. He looked up. The ghosts began to fade. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. But they smiled. And then they were gone. Silence. Then applause. First from Cyrena. Then from the crowd. Even the elders nodded, reluctantly. Darrick passed the trial. Not by strength alone, but by heart. Days later, beneath a sky lit by twin moons and falling stardust, Darrick and Cyrena stood atop the crystal terrace, surrounded by singing priests and glowing lanterns. There were no rings, no vows written by ancient law. Instead, they spoke truth. I choose you, Cyrena said, her voice clear and strong. Not because you are perfect, but because you are real. Because when the universe burns, you stand in the fire. Darrick, for once, had no joke, no sarcasm. I choose you, he said, because you saw me, not the warrior, not the killer, but the man underneath. And you loved him anyway. Their hands clasped. Light erupted from the ground, spiraling around them, sealing the bond not just of marriage, but of souls. Under the shimmering twin moons of Luminar, Darrick and Cyrena stood hand in hand. Their bond sealed not by grand ceremony alone, but by the quiet certainty of two souls who had found each other in chaos. The war still raged beyond their world, the Vraxlak threat far from ended. But for the first time, they faced the future not as warriors alone, but as partners. Darrick, once a lone fighter with nothing but his fists and fury, now walked through the glowing streets of the floating city as more than a survivor. He was loved, respected, and home. Cyrena, no longer burdened by duty without warmth, laughed freely, her heart lighter with every teasing joke he made, every gentle touch he offered. They fought together when needed, ruled side by side when called upon, and at day's end, returned to their tower where starlight poured through crystal windows and a small garden bloomed with earth flowers and luminary night blossoms intertwined. No fanfare could match the peace they found in simple moments, sharing star drink on the balcony, her head resting on his shoulder, him learning her language one clumsy word at a time, her watching him train, smiling at the wild, unstoppable force he was.